YouTube! My name is Niall. You join me once again in the Finale Guitar Studio in Sheffield, and you're watching my channel Folk Friend, your one-stop shop for Celtic backing guitar tutorials. A lot of people that I see when I'm teaching struggle with practicing. It's not necessarily that they don't practice, it may just be that when they start practicing they find themselves getting frustrated, or perhaps they over-practice, which makes it difficult to practice the next day because their hands are hurting, or they're just sick of playing, or they are like myself and they start practicing but then they have a cool idea and they go, ooh, I like this chord, I wonder what would happen if I did this, and then 3 hours later they're there noodling away some sort of space, alternate dimension, and the original technique that they were trying to practice has been completely forgotten about. There are all sorts of things that I've discovered over the years that you can do to streamline your practice time and make it more effective. And there are also certain review techniques which I use both in my guitar practice and in my business management as well. And what I've decided to do is to distill them all together into a format which I think will really help you shim down your practice time to make it more targeted, more efficient, and hopefully more fun as well, and certainly more rewarding. What I've done therefore is I've created a thing called the Folk Friend Guitar Practice Diary. And in it I've used several techniques which I've borrowed from various other fields as well as guitar practice in order to make your time a lot more efficiently managed and to keep you motivated using regular reviews and an events calendar. So what I'm going to be doing in this video is running you through my top 10 practice tips for folky guitar, and I'm also going to be showing you how you can make a system like one of these if you don't want to buy one yourself, in order to review your own progress and achieve the goals that you're aiming for. So one of the first bits in the Folk Friend Guitar Practice Diary is this little section at the start, which is my top 10 practice tips. So I'm just going to run you through the headlines of each one, and then I'll talk a little bit about how you can implement those. Number 1 is practice efficiently in short bursts at regular intervals, ideally daily. If you play for 10 to 20 minutes every day, that is perfectly adequate. It's much better to leave yourself wanting more and feel excited to come back to playing the following day than it is to wear yourself out and ruin your motivation. This is really important. Don't practice for too long, especially if you're a beginner and you're starting out. I know it's exciting and you want to jump in there and play for hours, but the thing is, because you're building new pathways within your brain, you're going to form those pathways much more quickly by repetition every day than you are by playing for 3 hours one day. And you'll find as well, if you try something new, you give it time to absorb it, and then you come back to it, it will have absorbed it and you'll find it easier the second time round. If you practice something that you're finding difficult for 3 hours, you'll find it progressively more and more difficult as your hands get tired, and you'll get more and more frustrated with it. Lots of people I see practicing things, they're wound up because they haven't quite finished a technique. Let's say they're trying to learn a bar chord or something like that. And they keep going with it and they keep going with it. They're trying to do it faster and faster because they're getting more frustrated. It's really motivation sapping. Don't do it. If you're finding something increasingly difficult, stop practicing. I know it's a weird practice tip not to practice, but if something's getting harder, stop. Tip number 2, make your practice fun. Don't kick yourself if you do something wrong, have a laugh instead. No musician was born brilliant and there is no wrong answer. This is really important for folk music. There is no wrong answer. I think folk music is meant to be a kind of communicative medium. A lot of it's improvised, you know, variations on a melody are something you can do for fun. There's no perfect version of the tune because it's an oral tradition. So if you play a wrong note, it's not a wrong note, it's a variation. You know, have fun messing around with things, and just because a certain chord progression was right in a book or a certain player played that, that's not the only right. You know, you can make your own versions of things. And this ties in with another tip which is later in the list, but I'm just going to mention it now. Listen to your ears. Your ears are the most important asset that you have as a backing guitarist. And if something sounds good, even if you don't really know why it's good, your ears are probably right. Tip number 3 is this, micro practice. This is based on a guy called Stephen Guise who did this thing called the One Push-Up Challenge, and I'm going to put a link down below to his website where you can find his book about that as well, because it's quite interesting. It's based on this principle of positive habit forming, which is used by all sorts of entrepreneurs and kind of self-help gurus and all these sorts of people. But habit building is really important, especially with learning a musical instrument. So Stephen Guys' One Push-Up Challenge was that he wanted to get fit, starting from complete scratch with no exercise experience, and basically the way that he started out was, he said, I'm going to form a habit before I start worrying about sort of training. And the way that he formed the habit was, he said, every morning I'm going to do one press up, because one press up is not difficult. You know, I often hear people saying, I didn't have time to practice this week, and I could say more about that. I think that people always do have time. You can make time. You can make 5 minutes. You can make 10 minutes. You go to bed 5 minutes later. You know, it's 5 minutes. It's nothing. Anyway, he said, every morning I'm going to do my one press up, and I'm going to go, well done me, I've done my one press up, and I'm going to make myself feel really good about that, and I'm going to do it consistently every day. And once you've got that habit there, what tends to happen is that after a little while that buzz starts wearing off, and you go, well, actually while I'm down here, you know, I might as well do another press up, or maybe 2 more. And then at the end of a few months of it, you've formed a positive habit where you feel good about doing your press up every day, and then you can start building into a specific targeted program of exercises, because then you've got that positive feeling about doing your exercise every day, and away you go. So let's say I'm fairly new to backing guitar. I know there are lots of tunes in G major, and I want to practice changing between the chords of G major so that I can play along in sessions by ear. So I want to start out by practicing G, C and D. Those are going to be my main chords. What I would do then is every day I'd say to myself, at 9 AM I play G, C, D. That's it, nothing more. I don't have to do anything else. Once I've done that, I can feel good about myself. I pat myself on the back and I say, well done, you've done G, C and D. Congratulations. After a little while of this, you're going to go, well actually, I've got 5 minutes spare and my guitar's in my hand now. So maybe I'll try going G, C, D, C, G, C, G, D, and making some other little progressions out of it. And then gradually, once you've built that habit, you can progress onto building in further things that you're working on. And that leads us on to tip number 4, which contributes to micro practice, which is this: leave your guitar out. You can see in the corner of the studio here, I've always got an acoustic and an electric easily available, so that every time I'm sat at my desk over there and I'm waiting for the computer to do something, often video rendering, which takes absolutely blooming ages, it's very easy for me to go, oh, while I'm here, I'll just pick my guitar up and I'll do some sort of scale exercise. Number 5, visualise where you would like to be in 6 months. Make a clear vision for yourself and picture it as often as you can. Visualise what is different to where you are now. So for my guy who wants to be a session player but he currently is not very good at playing by ear, perhaps that's going to be one thing to really focus down and work on. Another thing is going to be learning more about the music theory so he knows which chords are available to him. So once you've got a clear vision of exactly where you'd like to be in 6 months, then you can work out, well, realistically, what steps do I need to take and how long do I have to do each one. Now once you've got your 6-month goal, it can be quite difficult to keep that focus for a whole 6 months in order to achieve it. And what I've found in my own life is that all these other little side things come in and they distract me from getting it done. And what I've started doing with things like when I'm writing a book or when I'm trying to expand some aspect of the business or the shop or something like that, is that I break it down into manageable chunks and then I work out how long each one should take me, and I make myself write them in advance into quarterly, monthly and weekly reviews. And I thought about that and I worked out a way that I could convert it for guitar practice, and I found that it's made my guitar practice so much more efficient, it's untrue. So what I've done in this practice diary is I've set up regular reviews like these. This is the quarterly review page, for example, and it gives you a section to put your main goals in, and then any side goals that you can do if you get these ones done in time, or perhaps they're next on your project list if not. And then you break that down again into each month I would need to do these things in order to achieve the bigger goal. And then you break that down again into what I achieved last week, and each week there's a little box to remind you what your main goals are, what your side goals are going to be in case you complete those. And that way you really keep your focus honed in. And that leads me on to tip number 6, which is, in my experience, it is impossible to work on any more than 3 things at once. Generally, musical people and creative people I find are more scatterbrained than average people, which is one of our great strengths and also one of our great weaknesses when it comes to doing things in a targeted way or running a business. So what I do now is say, have you completed your 3 current goals? No. Well, in that case you need to crack on with those, and all those new things that you've thought of this week that are really exciting and interesting, put them on the list, and if you still want to do them in a month, then come back and do them then. And that way I weed out a lot of things that I would have ended up just wasting loads of time on. So if you're trying to become a great session player, you might be thinking there's so much to learn. I need to learn how to play reels, I need to learn how to strum jigs, slip jigs, hornpipes, all the common rhythms, maybe if you're Scottish, straths, space, all those things as well. Then I need to learn how to pick out the chords by ear. That means I'm going to have to learn a bit about music theory. I'm also going to have to practice listening to tunes in different notes, work out the notes they are. It can seem like a whole load of things. Well, what you need to do in order to do that is number 7, quantify your goals. I want to learn to play jigs is open-ended, and you probably will never feel that this task is complete because you can always improve on it. Instead, it's better to make the goal, I want to be able to play along with a jig at the average session speed of 110 beats per minute, using at least 3 different chords without having to pause for the changes. Now that is a goal, because there you've got some specific achievable objectives. The first thing to do is to learn how to change between the 3 chords nice and fast. The way that you do that is you get your metronome and you just practice strumming along at a slow speed. And once you get good at doing G, C and D at, let's say, 90 beats per minute, then you go, right, I'm going to speed it up a bit, and you put it on 94. And every time you achieve one of these little increments, you go, well done me, nice one. Don't go, right, it's still not very good, it's still rather slow, isn't it? You know, the thing is not whether you're the best guitarist in the world. The important thing is that you're a better guitarist than you were last week, last month, and probably a much better guitarist than you were last year. So even if you're still far from perfect, just know you're going in the right direction and that you're going to get there eventually. And that's the most important thing, I think. The next step then, once you got the chord changes at the speed that you're aiming for, would be to practice the jig pattern separately, and maybe you could be doing these as 2 separate isolation exercises as 2 of your 3 goals. So one would be the chord changes, gradually speeding up with a metronome. The other would be the jig pattern, gradually speeding up with a metronome. Once you've got those 2 exercises up to speed, then you can put the 2 together, starting again from a slow speed, work your way up with that, and then eventually you'll get the whole thing together, and that'll give you your complete goal. Tip number 8 from my practice diary is trust your ears. I've already talked about that a little bit, so let's move on. Number 9, play with people. If you have folky friends, try and get together with them for a few tunes. It might be daunting at first, but there is no better way to improve your confidence, motivation and speed of learning than learning from others. Go to sessions as well and play quietly. If you play along in the background quietly, no one's going to mind if you play something wrong. No one's going to go, God, that chord that I could hardly hear was dreadful, get out, go home. You know, people aren't like that, I hope, mostly. My other top tip for if you are trying to play along at sessions, by the way, is listen to the tune at least once through before you start trying to join in, especially if it's a tune you don't know. So that leads us on to tip number 10, which is teach. There is no better way to firm up your fundamentals than to try and explain what you've learned to somebody else. Inevitably, when you're trying to show somebody else how to do something on the guitar, they will come up with some other angle on it which you haven't thought of, and they'll ask you some kind of question to which you won't know the answer. and trying to think of those answers on the fly will really expose what you do and don't understand fully. As well as that, anybody that you've shown something to will probably have something really useful to show you in return, so you're going to get a really good knowledge exchange without having to shell out money for a guitar teacher. Finally, if you do want to shell out money for a guitar teacher, here I am. I'm currently teaching entirely via Skype, Zoom and WhatsApp because of the coronavirus. So if you are finding that there are gaps in your knowledge, or you're not sure which direction to progress in next, or you just want some tips with your folk music backing, drop me a message. You can leave me a comment in the box down below. You can visit my website finaleguitar.co.uk, or you can get in touch via my various social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter and all that good stuff. They're all linked in the box down below in the description. If you would like to get hold of your very own Folk Friend practice diary, you can find them in a little card in the corner of the screen, or you can visit finaleguitar.co.uk/shop. They're linked on there, and they're available on Amazon if you search Folk Friend practice diary. If you want to make your own version, of course, you can do that for free. You basically need to come up with a format where you've got a 6 monthly review, a 3 monthly review, and a weekly set of reviews. And what I like to do is to make a kind of template for each of those, print them out and put them in a folder in the right order, so that each week I turn over a new page and it's the right kind of review. If you've enjoyed this video, you'd really help me out by hitting the little thumbs up button just down below. The YouTube algorithm likes it and it shows it to more people if you hit that button, so please do that. And also hit the subscribe button, you'll get all my latest videos straight to your inbox every week. If you'd like to get involved with my free live stream Folky Fridays, I broadcast a Celtic guitar lesson every Friday at 5:30 PM UK time. You can find those on my channel, Folk Friend. Check them out if you would like to ask me any questions. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I'll be back next Friday with more great Celtic guitar tips, and I'll see you all for more videos very soon.